according to Gandalf, the wise wizard, the ring was actually, in fact meant to end up in the hands of a hobbit, and meant and not by its maker. There was more than one force at work, says Gandalf. Tolkien doesn't explicate it anymore, except in a letter of his in which he explains the obvious, that the other force that is at work is God. And Frodo must take the ring to Mount Doom, where it was forged, the only place where it can be destroyed. And humility is his asset, but no one is incorruptible. That is why forgiveness is the only way that one can understand others and also oneself better. And there is this character, Gollum, who is corrupted by the ring and desires it for him. And Frodo absolutely hates this character called Gollum. But Gandalf says that, who are you to judge anyone? Do you know what end that person might serve in the end? So Frodo learns to reflect that he is not perfect either, and learns to forgive, to have mercy on this Gollum. And that is why Gollum serves as a guide on this trip to Mount Doom. But in the end, even Frodo cannot resist the temptation of this ring. And when it should have been destroyed, Frodo takes the ring from himself and will not destroy it. But fortunately, Frodo had spared Gollum as a guide, and Gollum, who is very much corrupted, takes the ring from himself and wants to have it for himself. But it seems quite accidentally, Gollum dances into the fires of Mount Doom, and the ring is destroyed. But this event is very exceptional. And because Frodo does not deserve that the ring should be destroyed, because Frodo in fact is not a hero in the most normal sense. If he were a hero, he would have resisted the temptation until the end. But this shows a very realistic picture of human nature, that in the end corruption cannot be avoided. But nevertheless, God is merciful, as Frodo himself was merciful to Gollum. And because of the apparent accident is in fact a work of God and a work of grace, and it turns all things around, even the most hopeless situation. And this victory, even in the midst of hopeless situation, was called by Tolkien a catastrophe, and it is formed from the words catastrophe and EU, which means good in ancient Greek. So it is a good catastrophe. And it occurs when all things seem lost, but bad things work towards a good end. It's a salvific paradox. It is a term Tolkien came up with to describe the happy turns in the best of stories that reflect, according to him, the message of Christ's resurrection, that Christ defeated death through his death. Through a catastrophe, there came a catastrophe, a good catastrophe. And so, in Tolkien's works, one can see that the salvation requires sacrifice, and also salvation requires the wisdom to forgive, and it also requires healing and good ruling over the world. And the main savior in Tolkien's works is Frodo, because he is the one who sacrifices himself and his well-being for the good of the world. After Frodo doesn't manage to destroy the ring, he is nevertheless hailed as a hero, because he did, as you say, all that he could, even though he couldn't do anything in the end. But he remains a broken man and has to get healing in Valinor, in the land of the angels. But the fact is that it isn't only Frodo who achieves the salvation of the world, of Middle-earth. It is also Gandalf who teaches Frodo to forgive Gollum. And it is also the main character, the character who is titled in the Return of the King is Aragorn, the king who would rule the people of Middle-earth in a good way. He is the third sort of savior figure in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. And he also at one point heals Frodo so that he can continue on his trip when he is wounded by evil forces. So Aragorn's strength and healing powers are necessary also for good and stability of Middle-earth. But it cannot come to full fruit without the sacrifice of Frodo. And it can be deduced that there are three figures in three ways of salvation in the Lord of the Rings. Frodo is a sacrificial sort of priest because he sacrifices himself, and Gandalf is a sort of a prophet because he says the good word in the right situation, the word of forgiveness. And Aragorn is a king who rules in a wise manner. And these three aspects are in fact the three offices of Jesus Christ in Christianity. Is that Jesus Christ becomes the King of heaven only through his death and resurrection, his priestly sacrifice. And when he becomes the King, he counsels the world through his prophetic wisdom and forgiveness. So salvation always has three offices: priest, prophet, and king. And it is true, even if the story is not meant to be a direct allegory, because salvation requires these three things. It requires sacrifice, it requires wisdom, and it requires moral strength. And here you can see Aragorn, Gandalf, Frodo, four posters of the Return of the King. A very much kingly figure, as you can see, prophetic figure, and Gandalf the White, in fact, also himself came back from the dead, like Jesus, which some consider even to be too explicit an image, but it works fine in the context of the work. And Frodo sacrifices his own well-being in order to save Middle-earth. And here you can see the eucatastrophe, the good turn in the Mount Doom. And Frodo and his companion Sam are saved by the eagles because the ring has been destroyed and evil has been defeated for now. Evil always endures, but it can be defeated for a time by humility and forgiveness. And now, we delved into the Lord of the Rings, which is in fact the final of Tolkien's books chronologically inside the work inside Middle-earth. But the order in which people most often read these works is the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit, and then the Silmarillion. And it is also the order in which I read them. And it is in fact quite interesting to see it in many different orders. It's interesting if one reads The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, that one could consider it a much simpler book, because it was in fact written for children and for Tolkien's own children. And the quest in the story is in fact opposite to the Lord of the Rings. In the Lord of the Rings, one must lose a treasure, destroy a treasure. But in The Hobbit, there's a more conventional mission, namely to regain a treasure, to get a treasure back. And the story of The Hobbit is that a dragon called Smaug has destroyed a kingdom of dwarves around the Lonely Mountain in the very east of the Middle-earth. And he took over the kingdom of the dwarves, but the dwarves want to get back to the kingdom and regain the mountain and the kingdom. So a group of 13 dwarves marched from the very west of Middle-earth to east to regain the treasure and the kingdom. And Gandalf, the wizard, suggested they need a professional burglar to help them in their quest. And in the Shire there lives a hobbit called Bilbo, who is the very epitome of a well-to-do bourgeois. A bourgeois is a member of the middle class, and the word is in fact derived from a German root called Burg, and it refers to a city or a castle. And the word burglar is derived from the same root.